Greetings, everyone. I am Erebus Rex, your Gentleman Eldritch. And before we jump into the lore of the Lovecraft universe, we should first start by learning about the man himself. Let's take a look. Howard Phillips Lovecraft was born on August 20th, 1890 in Providence, Rhode Island. The only child of Winfield Scott Lovecraft and Sarah Susan Phillips Lovecraft. The young Lovecraft wouldn't spend too much time with both his parents, as at the age of 3, Winfield would develop tertiary syphilis that would leave him in a comatose state until his death 5 years later. Lovecraft and his mother would stay at his grandfather's estate with his 2 aunts. During this time, Lovecraft would be in and out of school due to illness and psychological issues. But due to the influence of his grandfather, Lovecraft became an avid reader with a special interest in Gothic horror. But just as Lovecraft found an outlet for his mind, tragedy struck again with the death of his grandfather. Not only did this greatly affect Lovecraft, but also mismanagement of his grandfather's estate left the family in poor financial standing, to the point the family home was lost, and they had to be moved into a much smaller house. The combination of everything going on at this point left Lovecraft with suicidal tendencies for much of his early life. It is also here that Lovecraft would develop a habit of night terrors caused by nightmares that would later influence his writing. This would be just the start of Lovecraft's troubled life. In 1908, just before Lovecraft was set to graduate high school, he suffered a nervous breakdown that was bad enough it prevented him from getting his diploma. This setback would also stop him from studying at Brown University, a lifelong goal of his that he would regret for the rest of his life. A little side note here. Brown University still exists to this day. It's an Ivy League college that is host to one of the largest collections of Lovecraft's work, such as manuscripts, letters, essay, poems, even Lovecraft's original drawing of Cthulhu. Brown may also be Lovecraft's inspiration for the in-war college of Miskatonic University. So in a strange way, Lovecraft did eventually go to Brown University. How about that? But getting back to the life of Lovecraft. From the years of 1908 to 1913, he lived a solitary life at home, writing poetry and talking only to his mother. This would all change eventually after Lovecraft sent a letter to a pulp fiction magazine called The Argosy. Lovecraft was apparently writing to complain about one of their romance stories due to its apparent insipidness. The letter caused enough of a stir that the president of the United Amateur Press Association took notice. In 1914, Lovecraft would be invited to join the UAPA, and this was the moment in Lovecraft's life that would begin to set up his legacy. It was during this time that he would write such stories as The Tomb and Dagon. Dagon would also end up being his first professionally published work, appearing in the pulp fiction magazine Weird Tales, a publication that would receive several Lovecraft original stories. Despair, however, was not far from Lovecraft. In 1919, his mother suffered from hysteria and depression, eventually had a nervous breakdown. This event was bad enough that it hospitalized her for the rest of her life until her death in 1921. Lovecraft would take the death of his mother very hard. But thankfully, not long after, another important event in Lovecraft's life would occur. At an amateur journalist convention, Lovecraft would meet Sonia Green, another amateur writer and hat shop owner. What she saw in Lovecraft we do not know, but in 1924 they married and moved into a house in New York City. The couple were not financially well off. Sonia even eventually lost the hat shop and had to move to Cleveland for work, leaving Lovecraft in New York, a notion he vehemently hated. Another side note here. The neighborhood in Brooklyn where Lovecraft lived was called Red Hook. He apparently hated it so much there that he made it the setting of his short story, The Horror at Red Hook. But getting back on topic, Lovecraft and Sonia would live apart for several years before agreeing to a divorce. When describing Lovecraft, Sonia often described him as an adequate, excellent lover. What that means, I don't know, but it may suggest that what little time they had together was at least happy-ish. For Lovecraft, this meant leaving New York and moving back to Providence. There he bought a house, and for nearly a decade wrote his most iconic works. From The Call of Cthulhu to The Mountains of Madness, Lovecraft crafted the mythos we know today. In addition, he was also a very active ghostwriter for short stories such as The Mound. But despite this being his most active years of writing, they were not his most profitable. Lovecraft's finances grew worse and worse with time, and eventually he had to sell his house and move into a smaller house with his last surviving aunt. And then in 1936 he was diagnosed with intestinal cancer and spent the last year of his life in constant pain until his death on March 15th, 1937. He was buried with his parents next to the family monument as a simple name on stone. But his story doesn't end there. After his death, friends helped collect and publish his unreleased works, such as The Outsiders and others. Over time, the works of H.P. Lovecraft began to grow into fame the author never knew. Then in 1977, 40 years after his death, fans raised money to buy a headstone for the late author. On it, they added a simple phrase that Lovecraft would often repeat in his letters: "I am Providence." But every now and again, be it from a fan or something else, you can find a different message written on the headstone. One more fitting to the legacy that is Lovecraft. That is not dead which can eternally lie, and with strange aeons even death may die. And that was the life of H.P. Lovecraft. And I know you may still have questions like, what about his cat? What about his racism? What about his friendship with Robert E. Howard, the creator of Conan the Barbarian? Or his correspondence with Harry Houdini? Questions I will eventually answer in their own separate video. But for this video, I just want to let you know about the life of H.P. Lovecraft. I have heard many people over the years talk about how they write off or ignore Lovecraft's works based on this or that. I'm not here to defend him, only to offer perspective on the life of a man who lived 132 years ago as of the making of this video. Because chances are, even if you are not familiar with his works, you have probably seen something of his or was influenced by him. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe and leave a comment down below. Take care.